Hilchos Nedarim Perek Shlishi, the Laws of Vows, Chapter 3. Today we're going to be focusing on the differences between vows and oaths. What's the difference between a neder and a shvuah? Says the Rambam, Halacha Aleph, Arba Dvarim Yesh Bein Nedarim L'Shvuas Bitoy. There are four things, four differences between a vow and a regular oath of expression. First of all, Shebi Shvuas Bitoy Ein Shvuah Chala Al Shvuah. When it comes to oaths, one oath cannot take effect where there's already another oath in effect. But with vows, one vow can take effect over an already pre-existing vow. And the Rambam will explain what that means in a moment. Second difference, hamatfis b'shvua potter. If you try to attach yourself to an oath, you're not attached, you're exempt. That means someone says, like you make an oath, and then I say, me too. I try to attach myself to the oath, doesn't work. U'b'nedarim chayav. But if I attach myself to a vow, then I am liable, the vow takes effect, as the Rambam will explain. Third difference, ein shvuas bitoy chala ela al divrei hareshus. A regular oath can only apply to things that are within my choice. They're optional, not mitzvahs. You can't make an oath to go against a mitzvah. You can't say, I swear I'm not going to eat matzah on Pesach. Unedarim chales al divrei mitzvah kedivrei hareshus. However, vows can apply to mitzvahs equally as they apply to optional things, and the Rambam will again explain each of these things in detail. Number 4, shvuas bitoy chala al davar sheyesh bei mamish val davar she'ein bei mamish. An oath of expression can apply both to an entity that has substance as well as to an entity that has no substance. The Rambam will explain what this means. Unedarim einon chalin ela al davar sheyesh bei mamish. But a vow can only apply to something which doesn't have substance. Forgive the background noise, we just have a little bit of a discussion taking place behind us. Halacha Beis, the Rambam now begins with the first difference and gives us the details as they apply to each one. Keitzad yachul neder al neder. What does it mean that one vow can take effect over another vow that's already in effect? Ha'omer, if a person says, Harei alai karbani machalti kikar zu. I take upon myself a sacrifice if I'm going to eat this loaf of bread. Harei alai karbani ma'ichlena. I take upon myself my sacrifice if I eat it. He says it twice. Va'achala, and then he eats the loaf. Chayav al kol achas va'achas. He's liable to bring a sacrifice for every time that he said, I'm not going to eat the loaf. When it comes to a shvuah, if you say, I swear I'm not going to eat today, I swear I'm not going to eat today, I swear I'm not going to eat today, you're only held liable once. But by a vow, you said forbidden twice, you're held liable twice. And the same thing applies to anything similar. A neder can take effect over and above another pre-existing neder. Number 2, Keitzad hamatfis b'nedarim chayav. What does it mean that when you attach yourself to a vow, you are liable, but not an oath? Shama chavere shenadar. So here we have the person next to his loaf of bread, and he makes a vow. This bread is forbidden to me. So you hear it. You hear the friend saying that. V'amar v'ani kemoischa. And you say, I am like you. B'toich kedei dibur, within 2 seconds. Within the time it takes to say, Shalom alecha Rabbi, peace unto you, my master. Within 2 seconds you said, I'm like you. Even though you didn't say in which respect, but it's obvious. You meant to be like him in the sense of the vow. So you become forbidden in whatever your friend is forbidden. Whatever vow he took extends to you. If the third person hears the second person who says me too, and he says me too, he may not even have heard the first person. He just hears the second guy saying me too. He's like, oh, I want to join. Me too. The Me Too movement. Even if it was 100 people. Each one is saying me too within 2 seconds from his friend. They all become linked to the original vow. They all become attached to the original vow, and they all become forbidden to eat whatever object was forbidden by the first person. Halacha Dalid, attaching yourself doesn't just work with people. It also works with objects. Similarly, if somebody says, Habasar hazeh olai osur. This meat is forbidden to me. So the oath begins with a piece of meat. And then even a couple of days later, he says, I want this bread to be like this meat. So the meat is under the vow, and he wants to attach the bread to the meat. So the bread becomes attached to the oath. It also becomes forbidden like the meat. If he then goes and says, I want the honey to be like this bread. And this wine should be like this honey. You're attaching more and more food. And even if it's 100, they're all going to be, by extension, prohibited, because vows can attach themselves to more and more people, more and more objects. Not only that, they can attach themselves to more and more days. Follow this. A person has yartzeit for his father. His father died or his teacher died on a certain day. And in his grief, or part of his mourning, he made a vow he's always going to fast on that day. People do this even till today. They fast on their parents' yahrzeits. V'tzam, and indeed he fasted. So now for him, this date on the calendar becomes a fast day. Ula'achar shanim, years later, Omar, he says, I want this day, a random day, to be like the day that my father or teacher passed away. So in this guy's life, that day that his father passed away is a fast day. So by saying that the random day is like the yartzeit, he's attaching days to other days. Now he becomes forbidden to eat anything on this day as well. Because he attached this day and made it forbidden like a day that's already previously forbidden. The same thing applies to all similar situations. Matfis bin Nedarim, attaching yourself to vows, can work with people, with objects, and even with time. Halacha vav, the third thing. What does it mean that vows can take effect on mitzvah objects the same way they take effect on regular objects? If somebody says, from now on, matzah on Passover night is forbidden to me. From now on, sitting in the sukkah on Sukkot is forbidden to me. Tefillin are forbidden to be taken by me. If you would make an oath like that, it wouldn't work. But he made a vow, they are forbidden. If he did the mitzvah and ate the matzah, sat in the sukkah, or put on the tefillin, he gets lashes. Which he obviously has to do, by the way. He has to put on the tefillin, because it's a mitzvah. But when he does it, he's transgressed his vow, and he gets lashes. The same thing applies to all similar situations. Needless to say, if somebody said his vow wasn't that he's forbidden to do the mitzvah. Instead he says, I take upon myself to bring a sacrifice if I eat matzah on Passover night. Of course you're liable to a sacrifice. Do the mitzvah, bring the sacrifice, fulfill your vow. The same thing applies to any similar situations. Now why is there this difference? How come a vow can take effect onto a mitzvah object but not an oath? And here the Rambam tells us what I've mentioned a couple of times in these laws. There's a fundamental difference between an oath and a vow. Shahanishba, when a person takes an oath, oiser atzmoi al davar shanishba alav. He forbids himself on the object about which he swore. This is called in Talmudic lingo, gavra, the person. Shvua falls on the gavra. When you make an oath, it's a prohibition on yourself. V'hanoider oiser hadavar hanodur al atzmoi. Whereas when you make a vow, the vow takes effect on the article, on the chefza. The object becomes forbidden to you. It's not so much you become forbidden, it's the object becomes forbidden. And that's what makes the mitzvah difference. Because nimtza, it turns out, hanishba levatel mitzvah, if somebody makes an oath to nullify a mitzvah, oiser atzmai, he's trying to forbid himself to do the mitzvah. That doesn't work. Ukvar atzmai mushba mehar Sinai. You're already under oath to do the mitzvahs from Mount Sinai, ve'ein shvua chalal shvua, and no oath can fall into another oath. However, v'ha'oiser davar ze beneder, when you forbid the object, the matzah, the tefillin, they become forbidden. That doesn't interfere with your prior oath. Ze hadavar hu shenesar, it's the object which becomes forbidden. Ve'oiser hadavar einem mushba mehar Sinai. The matzah isn't under oath from Sinai. We're under oath from Sinai. The people are under oath from Sinai. So we can't forbid ourselves, but we certainly can forbid the matzah. And the Rambam says, if you will contemplate deeply into the verses, timtza, you will find that the wording actually gives you that impression. It matches the oral tradition that we have from Mount Sinai. Look at this. This is the verse about shvua on the top. This is the verse about neder, about vows on the bottom. Look at the red words. When it comes to an oath, what does the Torah say? Lehara oy lehetiv. The scope of an oath is to do harm to yourself or to do good to yourself. That means b'divrei harishus. It's optional things. Additional good or additional bad to yourself. And you want to eat or drink today or fast, something like that. But by vows, what does it say? It doesn't limit it to good or bad things. It says, Kechol hayotze mipiv yasa. Whatever comes out of your mouth, that's what you should do. No difference between mitzvah or optional. Whatever comes out of your mouth, you do. This already shows you a hint to this difference between oaths and vows. Halacha tes, here's another case where your vow might interfere with a mitzvah. If a person makes a vow, he's going to fast on Shabbos or a holiday. Chayav latzum, you have to fast. Even though it's a mitzvah to enjoy pleasurable foods on Shabbos and holidays, your vow supersedes that. Nedarim chalim al divrei mitzvah because vows take effect on mitzvah objects, as we explained. What if a guy takes a vow that from now on, every Sunday or every Tuesday, he's going to fast? Now, a couple of Tuesdays later, a couple of days later, Tuesday is a holiday, or Tuesday is the day before Yom Kippur when it's a mitzvah to eat. Doesn't matter. Your vow supersedes it. You have to fast. And certainly if Tuesday or Sunday came out to be the new month when you're not supposed to fast, you still have to fast. With one exception. There's one time when your vow for fasting cannot supersede. And that is Paga by Chanukah or Purim. It's our time now. If Chanukah or Purim ends up on a Sunday or Tuesday, what do you do?
It's going to end. It's going to happen.
And it does.
Sunday.
This year it's Sunday. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. For the first time in a while, actually.
Yeah.
That's 7 years. Purim can fall out on Sunday or Tuesday. Chanukah for sure. Yidachen nidrei mipnei hayamim ha'ilu. Says the Rambam fascinatingly. Chanukah and Purim, you're not allowed to fast. It's a rabbinic decree not to fast. Even though you made a vow that you're going to fast, you push away your vow. Why? It's a bit counterintuitive. Since the prohibition to fast on these days is rabbinic, we have a principle that rabbinic decrees need reinforcement. So we say push away your vow to give strength to the rabbinic decrees. There's two ways to explain why do rabbinic decrees need strength. No, on Purim. Can you fast on Purim? No, you cannot. It's a rabbinic decree not to fast. What if you made a vow to fast? Doesn't matter, you can't fast. Why? Because rabbinic decrees need reinforcement. Why? The simple reason is because, look, biblical law, everybody knows to treat strictly. So they're not going to have a problem. But rabbinic law, if in this case we allow you to be lenient, then you might start being lenient in other cases as well. There's one commentary who gives a very interesting twist on it. He says, listen, if your vow could override rabbinic decrees, then there'd be no point in making rabbinic decrees. Imagine the rabbis would say, you can't have chicken and milk. Comes Philip and says, I make a vow that I'm going to have chicken and milk. Oh, now your vow supersedes the rabbinic decree. So there'd be no point to make decrees, because everybody would just undo all the decrees with vows. So therefore the Rambam says, when it comes to rabbinic decrees, they need to have a reinforcement, and a vow cannot override a rabbinic decree. And now the fourth and final difference between oaths and vows. Halacha Yud Ketzad Ein HaNedarim Chalim Ela Al Davar Sheyesh Bei Mamish. What does it mean that a vow can only take effect on an entity that has substance? So here the Rambam is going to use physical senses. Okay, a person, his eyes are used for sleeping, they close when they sleep, his mouth is for speaking, his hand is for doing, his foot is for walking. So watch what happens. And here the wording is going to be very important. Ha'omer, if someone tells a friend, Diburi alecha karban, my speech is a sacrifice for you. That means you have to stay away from my speech the same way you stay away from sacrifices. Does that become forbidden? Speech doesn't have substance. I mean, I know it's sound waves and everything, but the idea of talking isn't an entity of substance. So I can't forbid that onto you. You're not forbidden to speak to him. Because speech has no substance. I know, but I'm saying in concept, it's not exactly, it's not an object. Similarly, if he tells him, my speech is forbidden to you. That's not like saying, I want my fruits to be a sacrifice to you. I can do that. If I have meat in my fridge, I can say, I don't want you to eat it. The meat in my fridge is forbidden to you. I can do that. But when I say my speech is forbidden to you, it's not the same thing. In those cases of fruit, it would be forbidden because I have the authority. But speech, since it has no substance, I don't have control over it. Therefore, if someone would tell his friend, Karban she'eni medaber imach, I take a sacrifice on myself that I'm not going to speak to you. or I won't do work with you. Or I won't take our daily walk with you. Or I say, I swear, I'm making a sacrifice that I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to walk. You tell your wife, I take a sacrifice that I'm not going to have relations with you. All these things have no substance. Walking has no substance. Talking has no substance. Sleeping has no substance. It's not an object. Neither is relations. It's equivalent to saying diburi v'hiluchi v'asiyasi v'shimushi karban. My speech, my walking, my doing, my relations is a sacrifice. Shein dvarim shein bahen mamash, which are matters that have no substance, and vows don't apply. However, what if you label the limb in your body which they're attached to? Now it's a different story. Aval ha'omer, but somebody who says, Ye'aser pi lediburai, my mouth should be forbidden to talk. V'yadai lema'asehen, my hands should be forbidden to do. V'raglai lehiluchan ve'enai lishnasan, my feet should be forbidden to walk. My eyes should be forbidden to sleep. Harei haneder chal aleihen. So your mouth, your eyes, your hands, these are entities of substance. The vow could take effect on them. Lefichach, therefore, ha'omer lachaveira, if someone tells a friend, Karban pi miladabarimach, I impose a sacrifice on my mouth from speaking to you. V'yadai milasei simach, I impose a sacrifice on my hands from doing work with you. V'raglai milahalechimach, I impose a sacrifice on my feet from walking with you. Hareza asr, it's forbidden. V'cheina omer, if somebody says, Harei olai karbanim adabarim pleini oyim le adabarim oy, I will take upon myself a sacrifice if I speak with somebody or I don't speak with him. V'avar al dvarei, and he transgresses his words. Chayav b'karban, he's liable to a sacrifice. Or if he makes a vow that I spoke or I didn't speak to somebody, he'll also be liable in those cases. Because these last two categories aren't included in vows of prohibition, which we're talking about in these laws. They're vows of consecration. In other words, the last two lines here are a little different. If you take upon yourself a sacrifice, that's okay. The vow is on the sacrifice, not on the talking. So if you violate the vow, you have to bring a sacrifice. But in terms of the neder itself, it's only going to apply if you use the limb in your formulation of the words, not just the talking or the walking or the doing. Halacha Yud Beis, although the Rambam just said that it's not a real vow, if a person makes a vow about things that have no substance and he makes them forbidden, even though halachically speaking, the vow doesn't apply, as a responsible rabbi, you don't tell him that it's totally permitted. Since the person in his own mind forbade himself to walk or talk or this kind of stuff, and he thinks that the vow does apply, so the rabbi shouldn't just dismiss it. We open up a loophole for him in a different way, and we release his vow, even though he didn't become forbidden. This way we prevent people from behaving lightly with vows. Imagine you think that you're making something good, and it just gets dismissed. So in your mind, you're like, you know what? The whole thing doesn't matter. But if it's taken seriously and then released in a different way, now you realize that it's serious stuff, and you don't play around with it in the future.